Hello and welcome Year 6. This is Mr Smith, the Principal of Casterton College, Rutland, the school you'll be joining in September, and we're very much looking forward to seeing you. And about this time of year we would be preparing normally for our transition week, when you would come in and for a whole week you'd spend time with us learning about everything that goes on in the school and meeting everybody and really getting used to everything and familiar. But unfortunately, that's not what we can do this year. So instead, we're going to do a guided virtual tour through some important things to know about Casterton to help you to settle in. Now, what I strongly suggest is that you actually go through this PowerPoint with one of your parents or both your parents and maybe stop it at certain stages and have a really good chat about things, because there may be questions that you may have, there may be concerns that you may have, and maybe your parents can easily answer those. There's nothing to worry about. That's the important thing. So here we are at Casterton, and as the first slide said, you are actually quite lucky to get a place, because we've had an awful lot of people applying for places this year. And as I'm giving this presentation, we still have at least 10 people who are going to what we call an appeal for a place at Casterton because they can't get in. We had over 60 people on the waiting list at one point, and we've admitted now nearly 40 more people, but there are still some more people who would like to come. So we're having to make adjustments to make sure that there's plenty of space and we've got plenty of rooms and it'll all be well organised, which it will be. But just to say that actually getting a place at Casterton these days is quite an achievement in its own right. So well done for getting that. So this is me, Principal Mr Smith, and we are all really looking forward to seeing you. It's always lovely to see the new pupils, the new students coming into the school. You make the school, you become the school, and it's very much your school. And I want you to start thinking about Casterton as your school right away, because that way you can then start to really get used to the idea of what being a Casterton student actually means. Now you're going to be in what we call the lower school. And there's a lower school and an upper school. So if we explain how this works, in the lower school, you've got year 7 and 8. And that's led by Mrs. Quigley. She's the Director of Student Wellbeing. And so your tutor group, as we'll talk about in a moment, comprises of year 7 and 8. But don't worry, that's not the group, that's not the classes that you're learning. These are just for other things. Then there is an upper school that's for years 9 to 11, so the older students moving towards GCSE, and that's led by my Vice Principal, Mr. Rawls. You'll also be given a house, not that kind of house as we see in the slide, but you will be given a house, a bit like as in Harry Potter. And we have 2 houses. And these are the 2 houses, Aspire and Endeavour. So Aspire is led by Miss Bates and Endeavour is led by Miss Mystery. And these 2 houses are useful for lots of things. They give you a chance to have competitions and sports days, and when we have rewards assemblies and other things, we do organise things around these houses. So it's worth you knowing what the houses are. Now, just to say that if you have a brother or sister already at Casterton, then they will be in the same house as you. And there are, in fact, 8 tutor groups for the lower school in each of these 2 houses. So there's 4 in Aspire and 4 in Endeavour, and that's how it's organised. So you have a tutor group and you have a tutor, and this person is the person that you meet first thing in the morning, and they have an overview of everything that you're doing. So what happens in tutor time is that you go and you register in the morning, your tutor might have some notices that they want to give out. There's lots of important information each day, and your tutor may want to pass that on, need to pass that on. So that's something that happens first thing in the day. And it is really important to be there on time and not miss tutor time or be late to school. So make sure that you are there on time. You also will make sure that you have at least one other person from your primary school actually in your tutor group. So there will be one familiar face there for absolutely certain. Now let's think about how to behave. Now I know all of you know how to behave. So in a sense, this will be quite straightforward. And I also know that you can behave really, really well. And that's what we expect to happen. So we're just going to go through now some simple things to make sure you understand how to behave when you're at Casterton. First of all, you always call your teacher Miss or Sir. Now, sometimes it's Miss Brown or Miss Green or what their name is, or Sir. But then you would say Mr. Blue or Mr. Red or whatever it was. But you use the terms Miss or Sir. We're really, really polite at Casterton, and we like people to show respect to one another and certainly to all members of staff. And that's to all members of staff, whether it's somebody that's cleaning for us or whether it's me as the principal of the whole school. Now, we have a saying at Casterton, and it's called Ready to Learn, and this system works really, really well. So there are 3 basic, simple rules, and you absolutely have to follow them. There is no negotiation. We don't discuss this, and it's very, very important that you follow these 3 rules. You must always listen to the teacher. If the teacher is talking, you're listening. And that's that. There isn't any noise, rustling, or definitely not any chatter. The teacher would immediately stop. You can't talk over teachers. That is never done. Similarly, when the teacher sets you work to do, then that's what you must do. You get on with your work, and you get on with it in silence. Your teacher may then say to you, well, you can talk because of a particular reason. Say, for example, if you're allowed to discuss it with a partner in the class, but otherwise you just get on with your work in silence. And that's how you normally work. And you never stop other people getting on with their work. They're all there to learn. You're all there to learn. Everybody has a right to learn. Nobody has a right to stop anybody else learning. Now, we call these things being ready to learn. If you're not ready to take on these roles, you should not be in the classroom. And we say to our teachers, if a young person is not ready to follow these rules, they should not step over the threshold into your classroom. If they do, then we as a school, the senior leaders of the school, we've not done our job properly. If there's a major, major problem with somebody for some reason and they know that they're not going to be in the right state of mind, then we would have to deal with that. That's very rare, but we would have to deal with it. But what we don't allow is people to go into the classroom with the mind that they won't follow these rules, because that simply never is acceptable. Now, should anybody go into the classroom and then break one of these rules, for example, they talk over the teacher or they interrupt somebody else getting on with their work, then your teacher will give you one formal warning. And they would tell you this, and it'll be recorded on our computer system, so your parents will be able to see that formal warning was given. They can go on, there's an app they'll have, and they'll be able to go on and see that you've been given a formal warning. It is very rare for a year 7, in fact most students, it's very rare to ever get a formal warning. I'd say about 90% of students never get a formal warning in all 5 years that they are in the school at Casterton. But if you do, you get one, just one. That's it. Now, if after that you continue to break the rules, then there are no second chances. That's it. And you are sent out of the room to a place called the remove room, which has got desks and chairs set out, and it's supervised by a member of staff. And you must be silent in the remove room, and you must just get on with your work without communicating with anyone. There are very strict rules about the way you behave when you are in the remove room. Remove room students are taken for their lunch at a different time to other students, and then they're taken back again over the normal lunch period when everybody else is outside. You stay in the remove room until 5 o'clock in the afternoon. So that's an hour and a half after school. And the moment that you're sent to the remove room, your parents will be phoned, and they will be asked to collect you from school at 5 o'clock. Now, should your parents not be able to do that, and we really, really hope, because this is very important, that they absolutely did do that. But if there was a serious emergency, for example, or their car broke down or something like that, then we would speak to your parents. We would have to speak to your parents before you were allowed back into class. And this is important because we have to discuss what's gone wrong, because this is a rare event and something has seriously gone wrong if you're having to stay an hour and a half after school and have your parents collect you up. So we don't want that to happen to 99% of people. It doesn't happen to anyone. We don't want it to happen. So there is a rule, and this is for parents as well, that your child will be not allowed back into the classroom unless we've had that conversation with you, and that normally would take place in school. So, normally, therefore, if there was a problem and you didn't collect your child at 5 o'clock, they would go back into the remove room the following day, and you would collect them at 5 o'clock then. So just to give an explanation of how that works. We have some classroom routines, and these routines are things that you do in every lesson, and you must follow these routines, and it means then that the lesson gets, it's organised in a nice, smooth and structured way. And here are the main routines. So first of all, you would line up outside. Now, when you're in the classroom, there are one of the things we have are it's called the listening code, and the listening code comprises of 3 listening skills. And when the teacher is talking, you must follow these 3. So the first one is that you should sit up straight. We don't slouch. We don't have a head in our on the table or slump down. Or in our hands, we sit up straight. We have a good posture, and we look straight. We look at the teacher. In a class of 30, there would be 30 pairs of eyes on the teacher when the teacher was talking. And if you're a teacher and you're talking, you can tell straight away if somebody's actually looking out the window or looking down at something else. You look at the teacher. And thirdly, you stay hands-free. So you shouldn't have in your hand, unless the teacher tells you to for a particular reason, you shouldn't have in your hand pens that you're fiddling with or other bits of equipment or your book that you're flapping about. None of that. None of that. Your hands should be above the desk so the teacher can see them, and they should be free of things that you're holding. And as I say, the exception to that is if the teacher tells you. Obviously, if the teacher says write this down, then you would pick up a pen and write it down, or turn the page of a book. That's when you would turn the page of a book, but you wouldn't have anything else in your hand otherwise. If you forget your essential equipment, you will get a behaviour point, and this is really important. You must not do this. Now, getting a behaviour point isn't the same as getting a formal warning. It's not as serious as that, but it is still an important matter. And your parents will be able to see that you've got a behaviour point on the system, and your teachers will. And obviously, you don't want a behaviour point. So can you please make sure that you bring the right equipment? Now, you'll get more information on what the right equipment is, but there are some basics that you will always need. You'll always need a set of pens, and they should be blue or black ballpoint pens, not ink or fountain pens, please, because they tend to be quite messy. Black is preferable if you can, but we'll accept blue. And you always should have a set. So you shouldn't be running out of pens. Teachers do not, as a general rule, lend out pens. You would have to borrow one from somebody else and then give it them back, and that becomes very difficult indeed. So please don't forget that. You will also need pencils. You will need a green pen, a green ballpoint pen. We always have one of those because for activities at Casterton, the teacher may say, right, you mark your own work for something and then you mark it in green. Or you write a comment that you've thought of about your work and you write it in green. Or when you correct spellings in your book, you correct them in green. So you have to have a green pen, preferably a couple, 2 or 3 green pens ready to use. You must have a ruler. You must have a ruler. It's got to fit in your pencil case, so it's got to be the right size. But please, you must have a ruler. That is actually quite important. For maths, you'll have to have a calculator. Now, it doesn't need to be a hugely fancy one, what they call a scientific calculator. It just needs to be a fairly simple one. But the maths department will advise you a bit more on the types of calculators you need. But a simple, basic, calculator will be absolutely fine. Whenever you have PE, you must have your PE kit. If you forget your PE kit, the PE staff will give you kit that they store, and you'll have to wear that. And that you may not want to do that particularly. So, but that's what you have to do, because forgetting your PE kit is like forgetting your pen for a normal lesson. You can't do what the lesson's actually meant to be doing. So you must bring your PE kit, and you will get a behaviour point, or worse if you forget your PE kit. So that's really important. Now, some students leave their PE kit in their locker. We'll talk about lockers later, but some students will do that just as a way of making sure that they don't forget it, because then it's there for the whole week. When you leave a classroom, there are routines also to follow. Your teacher will direct you on how to pack away, but then as you're packing away, when everything's packed away, you will have to stand behind your chair in silence with your chair tucked in, and you must do that in silence. Your teacher will not dismiss you until you are stood behind your chair in silence, and in fact the whole class should be standing behind their chair in silence. Then the teacher will indicate that you are to be dismissed. Sometimes they'll say the whole class, sometimes they'll say row by row, or even desk by desk, depending on what the teacher wants to do. As you leave the classroom, just in the same way as the teacher said hello to you as you arrived, you must say goodbye and thank you to the teacher as you leave. So, bye Mr. Brown, or by Mrs. Smith, whatever it happens to be, their name, you must do that. And that's what we call courtesy or politeness. Thank you for the lesson, sir. Thank you for the lesson, miss. It's really important that we follow those rules. We are very, very strong on politeness and courtesy at all times at Casterton. When you are in the corridor, you also are in a public place. This is not a playground, and there are certain rules. We call it the corridor code, and there are certain rules that you must follow, or as we say, abide by, which means follow, when you are in corridors. So you must line up in a straight line when you're obviously waiting to go into a class. And remember, one class may already have gone into their room and be starting to set up. So if you're lined outside and you were making noise, you would be disturbing that class, and that teacher would be very cross indeed, I would imagine. So you line up in silence outside of your corridor, outside of your classroom in the corridor, and you never let the teacher down by disturbing other classes when you are in that corridor. So your behaviour in that corridor is actually pretty important. Now we come on to reading. Now, reading is probably the single most important thing you do along with writing, because it's the way that you do hear teachers explaining things, but in secondary school, most of the information you get is through reading, and you must be the strongest, most confident reader possible. You all must be very enthusiastic readers. There's no two ways about it. At secondary school, you can't function at all if you aren't reading a lot. And so you must read a lot. We teach reading an awful lot to make sure that if you have any weaknesses that you need to be improving in your reading, that they are you work really hard on improving them very quickly. Now we have something called Drop Everything and Read, which is for 20 minutes every day. So you read in silence for 20 minutes every day. And we have a rota system. So for example, in week 1, it would be period 1 when this would happen, whatever lesson it was each day, period 1. Then week 2, it would be period 2, week 3, it would be period 3, and so on. But we don't do Drop Everything and Read period 6. And the teacher will tell you it's Drop Everything and Read, and at that point you get your book out and you are reading in complete silence. And you are reading. You are not looking out of the window or at somebody else. You are reading properly. This is so important. Your teacher will be reading as well because they read too. We all read an awful lot. And you will be also expected to read in complete silence at all times. So you must make sure that there is no noise or distractions of any sort. When you leave school each night, we need you to read for another 20 minutes, same book, and that's also an important part of Drop Everything and Read. This is all part of a scheme we call Accelerated Reader, and you'll know more about it. You'll find out more about it when you come to Casterton, but it is a very important part of what you do at Casterton, and reading for 20 minutes at home is extremely important. So I'm going to say to parents at this point, if hopefully you are listening, it's probably the most important thing that you can do to help your child to become cleverer is for them to be reading for 40 minutes a day. It really is. There are hosts of research papers that will show how profoundly important this is in every subject, including maths, including science, including even sports. People that do not read do not learn. And if they do not learn, then unfortunately they make no progress at all. So it's really important. But everybody can do this. There isn't a single person in our school who isn't capable of reading with the right support, and reading independently, that is, with the right support, and we will give them the tools to do that job. But it's not just about reading anything. You have to read things that challenge you, that take you to the next level of your knowledge, that enable you to become a better and more effective and more confident reader. So Accelerated Reader is a scheme where we test you and we find out what your reading zone is. And then we say you've got to choose a book from that reading zone. And the book is slightly above difficulty, the difficulty that you would normally access for your current reading age. So it's just taking you a little bit beyond your comfort zone, but not too far. But there are thousands and thousands of books in every zone. So there's a huge choice. And we have access to lots of online books as well that you could order. Or, of course, you could bring your own book in, because nearly all the books you'll find are on the accelerated scheme, books that you would find in bookshops. And our library is very heavily stocked with lots and lots of books. Before the lockdown, we allowed each child to take home 4 reading books, and the shelves just cleared. There was virtually no books left in the library by the time that we went into lockdown. So that shows you how that works. You take a quiz at the end of reading the book, and you take that quiz online, and you can do it at school or at home, and the quiz generates a score, and we know that score, and your parents can see that score. And then every so often we put up a progress reading ladder, which is outside the library. Now, this is not a record of the reading age that you have. This is a record of the progress you're making with your reading. So it's very fair. It's about the effort you put in, really, to your reading. So if you're reading a lot and really making good progress, then you'll do really well and you'll be high up that ladder. And if you're not doing the same, you're not making the same effort, then you won't be as high up that ladder. And it is all about the effort you put in. You put the effort in, and then you learn from your mistakes, and that's how you get better. And that's really important to recognise. Now, one of the things that people worry about at secondary school is they think, well, I'm going to get lost. It's a much bigger building than I'm used to, and I will get lost. I won't know where to go. And every year, this is probably the number one fear when people walk through the door. Of course, if you were in transition week, you wouldn't be afraid, because you'll have gone through this and you'll know about it. But there's no need to be afraid. This is nothing. We will have lots of people all around the building who will tell you where to go. You'll be guided with older students in the first couple of days, and everything will be very clearly signposted. And there'll be lots of staff who will be there on site in different places to say, this is where you go. You go that way or you go that way. So please don't worry about, oh, I'm not going to find my room and then the lesson will have started and so on. We're very used to it. It doesn't happen that way. We pick anybody up long before they were wandering for a long period of time. So don't have that concern. This will be okay. Another question people always ask is, will there be lots of homework? Well, we use the word prep, so we call homework prep. So really we should ask this question, will there be lots of prep? Best to answer this question by explaining that there are certain different types of prep. The first one that you almost always must do is the 20 minutes reading at home every day. That is important prep, and I want to make sure that parents are well aware of that. Over and beyond that, in Year 7, you will have weekly prep in the subjects of English, Maths and Science. But then you will have some prep in the other subjects that you have, like History, Geography, French or Spanish, and Expressive Arts and Design. But there, it won't be so often. And the prep there is usually to revise for tests. You'll have tests called core knowledge tests. You'll have spelling tests in each subject. And you'll have the core knowledge and the spellings given to you in advance in something called a knowledge organizer. But you then have to revise. You have to learn that at home, so you know it really, really well for when you come to school. And you people say, oh, sometimes I've not got a good memory. Everybody's got the same memory. It's how you train your memory. And we'll teach you a bit more about how to get better with your memory. So there are various things you can do, like you revisit something 3 times. So you learn, you look at it once and then write it down. You must write it down. Then you might say it as well. Then you go back to it maybe a day or 2 later. And then you leave it for a few days, and then you go back to it a 3rd time. And it's only the 3rd time, when you try to recall it, that's when you really, really start to remember it properly. So there are techniques we teach you like that help you to revise the knowledge that you need, because it is really important that you know that and know that knowledge well. We also ask you to write academic essays in each subject, and the different styles of writing. So, in history, for example, you will be taught how to write like a historian. In science, you will be taught how to write like a scientist. In drama, you will be taught how to write scripts, for instance. So, these sorts of things. Now, in writing academic essays, your teachers will give you plenty of help. They'll give you a guide in each subject, and they'll have certain key words that you've got to include in that subject, in that essay. So it'll be important to follow that and read that guide carefully. But you prepare the academic essay at home normally. You do it in draft. And that's because we always want you to plan your work out first. You won't just write it out. You won't be allowed to do that. You will plan it out carefully at home. And you can do that on a computer, and check the spelling and grammar and so on. Then you bring the draft into school and you write the essay out by hand at school in a timed situation, because you've got to get used to that as well, because there are tests and exams that you sit when you go through secondary school. So you have to do those bits at home. But these are the kind of things that are homework, the prep that you do in other subjects apart from English, maths and science. Now, some people say, are we allowed to go to the toilet? Well, the rules are very simple. You're in year 7 now, so we generally wouldn't allow you to go to the toilet during lessons unless there was an emergency or you were unwell. Obviously, if there is an emergency, you would need to raise your hand and quietly tell the teacher. But it would be an emergency, and not just because you feel like it. It would be a rare event. You should always go to the toilet before your lesson. That's an absolute given. We wouldn't normally be expecting you to leave the lesson to go to the toilet. That's an unusual thing. So can you please make sure that you avoid that, unless of course there is an emergency, because obviously we don't want an accident of any sort, and we do want then for you to have to do that. And if you do have a medical issue which means that you may need to go more often, then your parents will need to inform student services so that they can then inform the teachers, so then they're aware. Casterton is a mobile-free building. You are not allowed your mobile phone in the buildings. You are allowed your mobile phone outside, on what we call the field or the back tarmac. You're allowed that simply because people bring their mobile phone because parents sometimes want them to be safe when they're going to and from school, especially if they're walking, and it's convenient for that. But you are not supposed to be using your mobile phone for any other reason in school. If you have your mobile phone out in a corridor or going to a classroom, then any adult that sees you will immediately confiscate it, and you will have to hand it over. And then you've lost the mobile phone until the end of the day, when you have to then go and collect it. If you do this several times, then what happens is that it's confiscated until the end of the week, and you simply don't get it back until the end of the week. And at that point, your parent has to come in and collect it from us. So this is important principle. The exception is if ever your teacher tells you to get your mobile phone out. Now that can happen sometimes. There are reasons why the teacher may say, take a photo of this, or some such similar situation where it's handy to use a phone, and they will instruct you then to do that. But that would be the only reason that we'd use a mobile phone in any of the school buildings. And we've talked a lot about this already, but there is a courtesy code, and the courtesy code has the following elements to it, and we expect you to follow these things. So if there are any adults in the building, that includes any teaching staff or other staff of any sort, that includes any visitors, that includes any parents, you should be opening the door for them. So as you see them approach, you open the door. That is a mark of respect. You should smile and say hello. If there's a member of staff in the corridor and you're walking towards them and it's just you or them, because that sometimes will happen, you would say good morning or good afternoon, and you would smile just politely. That's a courtesy thing, rather than just saying nothing. Obviously, if there's lots of people, you wouldn't be saying that all the time, but that's something you would say as a simple rule. And when the time is appropriate, you would do that as well. If there were any visitors around school, for example, you would smile and say hello to them, or good morning, or good afternoon, so that there was a courteous greeting. Always look smart. We're big on uniform at Casterton. Now, there is an exception that I can tell you now, which is that because of the coronavirus problem, we are going to have to operate a different system for the first few weeks of the autumn, we think. And this will mean, therefore, that you may not be in your uniform for the first few weeks. We'll tell your parents about that properly. But that isn't normal. In normal life at Casterton, you will dress smartly. Your shirt will be tucked in. Your tie will be worn properly if you're a boy or a girl. Your blouse will be properly worn and sit above the waist. And you will make sure that you look smart. Your hair's brushed properly, and you look tidy. Saying please and thank you, I'm sure you are all absolutely aware of the fact that this is always required as an act of basic courtesy. So please and thank you are important parts of the courtesy code. If you approach a door and someone is in the room, you must knock on the door first and wait to be invited in. You don't just walk into rooms or classrooms when there are people in there. That would be rude. And we don't shout in our building. Obviously, if you're in the sports hall and you're in a sports situation, the teacher may raise their voice in that way because they're giving an instruction, or a member of staff may do so when they're giving an instruction to a large number of people or in a crowd. But you wouldn't be shouting. You don't shout in the building at all. That's something you never do. We really hope that this doesn't happen, but it would be silly to say that it never happens. There isn't a school anywhere in the world where no one has ever experienced this. So it is important to say what happens, what you should do if it does happen. If someone does call you some unpleasant names, and they're doing it deliberately, they're deliberately making you feel unhappy, then you must tell an adult, you must tell a member of staff. This is really important. We want our students to feel happy in school, and the most common reason why there wouldn't be is if somebody else were deliberately making them feel unhappy in some way. And it's important that you understand that you must tell an adult about this. Now, there'll be a variety of options here which we'll go into. But if you, for whatever reason, feel that you can't tell a member of staff, then ask your parents to email student services, and in that way we will find out about it. But student services and your tutor are usually the people that you would tell. But if it were in the context of a classroom, I mean, everyone should be getting on with their work. But if somebody somehow made a comment, say outside when they were waiting to go into the class or something like that, then you definitely should tell the teacher. And if this happens at a social time, lunch or break, then you should definitely tell one of the members of staff that are on duty. There are lots of people always around, and you must tell them. We don't want anybody to be unhappy, and people worry sometimes that they will get into more trouble because the other person won't like it. I can assure you, we're very, very experienced at dealing with that, and we are very good at making sure that it doesn't happen again, and you are not then in trouble or in danger because you happen to tell on somebody else. That is not how it works at Casterton. Transport issues. If you are unwell when you are at Casterton, obviously if you're unwell overnight, then your parents must let us know. The best way of doing that is email. You email Mrs. Amos. You'll have her email address. We'll give you that. But you email her. Now you can ring student services. Mrs. Amos is in student services, but you must do all of this before 8:45. And then we know that your child isn't well. If for whatever reason we didn't get that phone call, then we have a call system that would automatically contact you and would ask for a message. That's really important. We've got to know where your child is. If you have a dental or medical appointment, can you make sure it's out of school, please? I know that sometimes this can be difficult, but it is incredibly disruptive to learning if people are leaving for these reasons. Now, obviously, in the event of an emergency, that's different. So if it's an emergency medical appointment or a specialist care in a hospital, for example, then that's different. But otherwise, we'd expect you to be before or after school hours. There will be a whole set of special arrangements for people as far as managing coronavirus is concerned, and I think it's best to leave that to another time, and we'll go through that with you separately. But it'll be similar, I suppose, to the rules that you have currently for your primary school. You will get a letter telling you how to get a locker in school. Now, everyone can have a locker. There are lockers in various parts of the school, and this is quite a handy thing because it stops you having to carry around heavy bags and lots of equipment, and it also stops you forgetting things. So you can keep things in your locker. You pay a small deposit because if we ever you lose your key or something and we have to break into your locker, it damage it, and that's what the deposit's about. You get the deposit back at the end of the year, but then I strongly recommend that you do get a locker. It's a very useful thing to have. There are lots of rewards that you can earn at Casterton, and we call our reward system LORIC, or LORIC points. So you earn LORIC points, and there are a number of these, and I'll tell you what LORIC stands for, but we give you then these points on our computer system, and your parents can see if you've earned LORIC points, and as you accumulate them, so there are certain rewards that come at the end of each term for having got a certain amount of points. So it's really, really worth having, and you see students with lots of badges, like medals, rows of medals on their uniform, which they wear really with great pride, and these are for all sorts of things that they earn through all sorts of activities that they've done. So LORIC stands for L for being a leader, showing good leadership skills in something out of the ordinary. O is for being organised in a particularly good way, so everybody should be organised, but you've been given some complicated task and you are particularly well organised in that. R is for being resilient. That means you've had to put up with something that was really tough, but you've coped with it. You've coped with it well. You've managed it well. I is for showing what we call good initiative. That means that working out that there is something you have to do in a certain situation. What some people might refer to as a degree of common sense. and taking the initiative in certain situations is a good thing. We encourage that, and you could get that. And C is for communication. So, for example, you were speaking to parents or showing visitors round or something similar to that, then that would be a C for communication. Or if it's just great classwork, then you get what we call Loric Plus points. So you get points on the system for just doing something, but it's got to be out the ordinary. Loric points are not earned just for following the rules. Everybody's quiet in class. Everyone behaves. Everyone does their homework, their prep. Everybody does these things. You don't get Loric points for those. You do get Loric points for doing things that are over and above what we would expect all students to be doing all the time. And one of the things naturally that people worry about are friendships. Obviously, you may think, well, I've got people I know from my primary school, but there'll be an awful lot of people who don't. We take children from over 20 primary schools, and I guarantee you that there will be at least 15, if not more of you, who will not know anybody from your previous primary school when you arrive at Casterton. That's fine. We've done our research. We found out who, if you do have particularly good friends, we found that out. And where you don't, we do everything to give you opportunities to get to know other people and be friendly with other people. Now, we all have a different way of making friends, and no one's going to force you to be friends with one person or another. It doesn't work that way. But what we do want to do is to make sure that everything is friendly. There's a nice, friendly atmosphere, and people... if you see somebody that looks as though they don't have anybody to talk to, then make them part of your friendship group. Be friendly to them, or just say hello and things. They might be quite shy. Some people are very shy and don't know what to say. Other people are naturally more sort of open and say lots of things. Be kind and friendly to other people all the time. This is the kind of school we are. And it's what makes us what we are. And everybody at Casterton is really friendly. And we want you to be really friendly to each other. There's no place for anybody that thinks it's right to go around not being friendly to people. Being nasty to people is not part of what's acceptable at Casterton, ever. We will help you by giving you a buddy in your tutor group. Now, you won't be in your tutor group for your subject lessons, but you will be in your tutor group for the morning registration and for one lesson on a Thursday afternoon. So you'll have a buddy there, and that'll help you just in the early phases. And you might not find that you're friends with them forever, or you might be. I don't know. But either way, it's to help you get off to a good start. Now, some people might still be feeling a little scared. They shouldn't. They absolutely shouldn't. You must tell yourself that we are very experienced at working with New Year Sevens, and we completely understand what you'll be feeling like. We've seen it with thousands and thousands and thousands of Year Sevens over many years, and we know exactly what happens, and we know exactly how to deal with it. There is nothing that will happen that we haven't dealt with 100 times before. So please do not feel scared. And, people will say, what if this goes wrong? What if that goes wrong? Try not to get into that frame of thinking. It's very easy to start thinking that way. Don't think that way. We've already thought of it. Whatever it is, we've already thought of it, and we already know a way to, avoid it or to deal with it if it happens. So, the things I say are everybody's very friendly at Casterton. All the surveys we do say that the school is very, very friendly compared to almost all secondary schools. People behave very properly in class. Don't be worried about the strict rules. They are there for a reason. It's a good thing. It means that in class and in the corridors you're safe and you learn. and that's a good thing. If you follow the rules, you will be fine. Um, there's nothing to worry about. They're simple rules. You won't be told off for making mistakes. You will be told off if you deliberately didn't follow the rules. You won't be told off if you don't understand something or you made a mistake, just a genuine mistake. Those things we do all the time, and that's normal, and that's absolutely fine. We want you to enjoy school and be happy. School is a place, as you're at the moment probably thinking, which you're actually missing. Some of you are probably missing school, and even if you're probably not thinking that at the moment, it's something that you should think, insofar as if you're not enjoying school, something is wrong, and we don't want that to be the case. And we would have to talk about why it was the case. You should be happy in school. School should be a nice, bright, happy place to be, and we very much want it to be for you. We all have questions. We all need help. There are lots of questions you have. Student Services is at the centre of the school, and you find out where it is very, very quickly. And everyone in there is there to help, and they can help you in lots of different ways. And they're always very busy, and you should make sure you go to them if you have questions. I've lost my timetable, or what do I do about this problem? Whatever it happens to be, they will be in a position to be able to advise and support you. Now you have a school day, and this is the school day. This is how it's broken up. So you have 6 periods in a day, except for on a Friday when you only have 5, and you leave an hour early. On a Thursday, period 5 is a slightly different timing. Period 5 on a Thursday is a longer lesson, and then period 6, you are in your tutor group, and you do some work there called the Thursday Thesis, where you read some really interesting extra piece of knowledge, because we want you to learn as much as you can about as many different things as you can. But most days it's 6 lessons in a day, and each lesson, you'll notice, is an hour long. And the interesting thing about this is that actually it goes very quickly. So you won't really notice the end of the day. You'll think, oh, it's happened before you realise. So and that's a good thing. That's a good thing. That's how school should be. The week is actually, you have 29 lessons in a week. You don't have 30 because you missed that final lesson on a Friday. You have 29 lessons in a week. Now, most schools in England have 25 lessons in a week. So you actually have 4 lessons more than most schools do. So that's quite a big thing over the year. In fact, over the course of 5 years at Casterton, it's worth roughly an entire extra year of learning in class, which is a huge thing. It's one of the reasons why Casterton does so well with results and progress, because you've got so much more time to learn in. But as we say, Thursday afternoon is slightly different, and Friday afternoon is different, and you do finish early on a Friday, which is nice. We say your ability is not fixed, and we've sent projects to your primary schools which take you through this idea in much more detail. It's so important. We never want anybody to say you are good at that, but you're not good at that, because you can change that script. Anybody can. Sure, some people will be better than others at all things, but that can change as well. We know all the scientists will tell you, all the psychologists will tell you, all the educationists will tell you, the brain is like a piece of plastic. It can be moulded, and when you're young, it's very, very mouldable. And your ability is definitely not fixed. So if you ever hear an adult say, well, I'm not very good at maths, that's awful. That's very wrong, because they should say, I'm not good at maths now, but I could be. If I worked hard at it, I would be. You're not. Nobody in the world is just naturally and never ever will be any good at something like maths or something like spelling. You might find you're dyslexic, in which case you need to find techniques to get round that particular obstacle. But you can spell very well because there are millions of people in the world with quite severe dyslexia who learn to spell very well in time, and they learn to write and read extremely well. Got nothing to do with your intelligence at all, absolutely nothing. Some of the most intelligent people in the world are dyslexic or struggle to read at first. Similarly, we don't talk about people being gifted and talented. Um, Gifted and talented means that you've been given an ability and it's come from somewhere on high and you've got no control over it. And that just simply isn't the case. You might be lucky enough to be born with a certain ability to start with, but that's just the start. You'll never go anywhere with it unless you work hard at it and you learn from your mistakes and you keep on working hard until you get better and better. And that is literally how everybody gets better. Your ability is not fixed in any way, and we show this every year at Casterton. Our children make huge amounts of progress over and above that which children make in most schools in the country. And they do it because we don't label you. We never call anybody stupid. We never call anybody gifted. We talk about individual potential. We talk about people. And we say, well, you might be good at this now, but you could be even better if you did that, or even better if you did this. And that's how to think of it. And you must think of it that way. I guarantee you, if you do, eventually you will get better and better at everything. And this is the most important message, and it's why it's our ethos. It's what we believe at Casterton. Every teacher knows this, and the science behind it very, very well indeed. And we also say dreams don't work unless you do. You've got to work at things. Nobody is just good at something. They have to work at it. You might have to do it 1,000 or 10,000 times. And providing each time you do it, you then think about what you did wrong and try and improve, then each time you'll get better. It's no use doing the same thing over and over again and never learning from your mistake. But so you've got to look back and think, well, what did I do wrong? But you've got to work at things. You just have to work at things. And that's not bad. That's a good thing. It's a good thing to work at things. You know how to work at them. You know when to give yourself a break. You know when to have fun. You know how to balance your life out. So it's not all work. There's also plenty of fun and plenty of enjoyment. And work can be fun because work can be incredibly satisfying. And being good at something means you enjoy doing it. And that's what happens. The better you are at something, the more you enjoy doing it. So don't dream about being this, that, or the other. Work hard to get to that point, and then nothing will stop you getting better at something if you really want to be better at it. You might not be a genius, the world's best at that thing, but you will get better at it, and better and better and better at it, and that's the important thing. And this is something you will see us talk about an awful lot. So that brings us to the very end of our introduction to Casterton. I hope you enjoyed it today. I suggest you go through this again a few times. You won't have been able to take everything in. You can go to individual slides and look at those. You can go through this with your parents. You've got to download this on OneDrive because it's a big file, and save it there on your computer, and then you can look at it whenever you want to, just as a reminder. So I look forward to seeing you in the future.